I pulled into the Westfield Municipal Water Treatment Plant lot just before 11, gravel crunching under my tires in the dark. The night shift, third one this week. The facility spread out under sodium lights, all concrete and corrugated metal, pipes running everywhere overhead and underground. I'd worked here 2 years, knew every valve, every filtration chamber, every chemical storage room. The place hummed constant. Pumps and aerators and motors that never stopped, not even when people did. 11 employees had vanished over 4 months. That number sat in my head while I locked the car. 11. Not quit, not transferred, not called in sick and never came back. Vanished. Gone from their posts during shifts, personal belongings left in lockers, vehicles still in the parking lot. Management called them industrial accidents. Missing persons. The county sheriff had opened investigations, found nothing, closed most of them. The plant had a reputation. Everyone knew it. Hazardous conditions, aging infrastructure, chemical exposure risks. OSHA had cited us 14 times in 3 years. When people disappeared from a place like this, folks assumed the worst but figured it made sense. Tragic, yeah. Unexpected? Not really. I grabbed my lunch bag and headed for the employee entrance. The building looked the same as always. Same flickering light over the door, same rust stains bleeding down from the roof gutters, same sign, authorized personnel only. But 8 of those 11 workers had come back. That's what made it different. That's what turned my stomach every time I walked through these doors. I badged in. The break room sat empty, coffee maker gurgling through a fresh pot someone had started. Midnight shift didn't officially begin for another 40 minutes, but some of us came early. Fewer people around. Easier to prep for the work without distractions. Logan Gray's office light was on. I could see him through the interior window, hunched over his desk, phone pressed to his ear. Plant manager. 52 years old and looking older every week. He'd been fielding calls constantly. Families. Desperate, terrified families. They'd been calling Logan for 3 weeks now, ever since the first return started. Parents, spouses, kids, all of them begging the same thing. Please fire my husband. Please let my wife go. You have to terminate my father. Something's wrong with them. They're not the same. Please don't let them come back here. Logan wouldn't do it. Couldn't, probably. What reason would he give? Your family says you're acting strange? HR would laugh him straight into a lawsuit. I poured coffee into my thermos. Checked the assignment board. Filtration oversight tonight. Fine. I preferred that to chemical monitoring anyway. The door opened behind me. I didn't turn around. Didn't need to. Blake Green walked past me to the time clock. Moved with this smooth, even gait that didn't vary. Didn't acknowledge me. Didn't pour coffee or check his phone or do any of the small human things people do in break rooms. He just clocked in and walked toward the equipment floor. Blake had disappeared 6 weeks ago, vanished during a Wednesday night shift, left his jacket hanging on his chair, his sandwich half-eaten on the table. Security footage showed him walking toward the intake tunnels at 2:17 in the morning. Never showed him coming back out. His wife reported him missing. Search teams combed the facility, found nothing. Then Blake showed up for his next scheduled shift 4 days later, still wearing the same clothes, badge already scanned, heading to his station without a word. I watched him go. That mechanical precision in every movement. No wasted motion, no hesitation. They all moved that way now. All 8 of them. Kim Thompson had been first, disappeared in early September, returned 5 days later. Then Marcus Webb, then Blake, then Sarah Chen, David Rodriguez, Chris Martin, Amanda Price, Rachel Foster. 8 people who'd vanished and come back changed. The way they talked. That's what got me first. Identical monotone voices. Not just similar. Identical. Same flat pitch, same measured pace, same empty cadence. Kim used to laugh at everything, loud and bright. Now her voice had all the warmth of a recorded message. They worked differently, too. Perfect mechanical precision. No mistakes, no variations, no human inconsistency. I'd watched Sarah Chen calibrate the chlorine injection system last week. Every movement exact, every measurement perfect. No double-checking, no second-guessing, just smooth robotic efficiency that made my skin crawl. I'd tried talking to Marcus once, asked him how he was doing, where he'd been. He'd looked at me with these blank eyes and said, "I am performing my assigned duties." That was it. Then he walked away. None of them ate lunch anymore. I'd noticed that within days. The break room used to fill up during the midnight meal break. Everyone bitching about the work or talking about their families or making plans for days off. Now the 8 of them just kept working through breaks. Didn't stop, didn't sit down, didn't drink water or coffee or anything. Just maintained their stations with that same inhuman consistency, shift after shift. They never looked tired, never showed up late, never called in sick, and they all carried the same blue key card. I'd gotten close enough to Kim last week to see it clipped to her belt. Bright blue plastic, company logo on the front, but a different design than our standard access badges. I'd asked Logan about it. He'd gotten defensive, said it was a new security protocol for certain clearance levels. Bullshit. I'd seen the cards on all 8 of them. Identical placement, identical lanyards, identical everything. Yesterday I'd found one on the floor near the intake tunnels. Someone must have dropped it. I'd picked it up before I thought better of it. 6 protocols printed on the back in small, precise text. Report for assigned shifts without deviation. Maintain optimal efficiency in all designated tasks. Silence regarding operational procedures must be maintained. Coordinate activities with other protocol-assigned personnel. Respond immediately to summons. Report to intake valve 7 when called. That last one, intake valve 7. I'd worked here 2 years. There was no intake valve 7. We had 6 intake valves. I knew the system. But that card said valve 7, clear as anything. I'd meant to keep the key card, study it more, maybe show someone. But when I'd reached for it in my pocket an hour later, it was gone. Just gone. I'd searched everywhere. And that night, Amanda Price had stared at me across the equipment floor with those empty eyes, that blue key card clipped to her belt again, and I'd known somehow she'd taken it back. The worst part came from talking to their families. Logan wouldn't tell me details, but word spread. Small town, smaller industry. People talked. Rachel Foster's husband had shown up at the plant 2 days ago. I'd seen him in the parking lot, arguing with Logan by the front gate. He'd been crying, shouting. My wife doesn't know our daughter's name. She looks at Emma like she's a stranger. Please, you have to help us. Something happened to her here. Kim Thompson's mother had called Logan 16 times in 1 week. I'd overheard him on the phone, voice tight with stress he wouldn't admit to. No, ma'am, I understand your concern, but Kim is performing her duties satisfactorily. There's no grounds for termination. If you believe she needs medical attention, that's a personal matter. But it wasn't medical. We all knew it wasn't medical. These people, these 8 workers who'd come back, didn't recognize their own families anymore. Didn't remember their children's faces. Didn't respond to their spouses' voices. Walked into their homes and moved through the rooms as if everything was unfamiliar. As if their entire lives had been erased and replaced with nothing but work protocols and that flat, empty voice. Their personalities were gone. Just gone. Whatever came back from those disappearances, it wasn't the same people who'd vanished. I finished my coffee. Clocked in. Headed for the filtration monitors. The night shift was just beginning. I'd been keeping notes. Nothing official. Nothing that'd end up in Logan's reports or the sheriff's investigation files. Just my own observations scribbled on the back of maintenance logs during breaks. Routes the missing workers had been assigned. Times they'd vanished. Last known locations according to security footage. Took me 3 weeks to spot the pattern. Every single one of them, all 11 who'd disappeared, had maintenance routes that passed through the abandoned north filtration chamber. Kim Thompson had been doing valve inspections in that sector. Marcus Webb was scheduled for pipe integrity checks. Blake Green's route included pressure gauge readings along the North Corridor. Same story for Sarah, David, Chris, Amanda, Rachel, and the three who hadn't come back yet. Their assignment sheets showed the same sector on their boards the nights they vanished. The North Filtration Chamber had been shut down 8 years ago when the city upgraded to the newer Southern system. Supposed to be sealed off, just sitting there empty while management figured out whether demolition or repurposing made more financial sense. But the access door wasn't locked. Never had been, far as I could tell. Workers still cut through there as a shortcut between sectors, still used the corridor for storage of equipment that didn't fit anywhere else. I needed to see it for myself. Grabbed a flashlight from the equipment locker during my meal break. Told nobody where I was going. The break room was empty except for Amanda Price, sitting motionless at a corner table. Not eating, not drinking, just staring at the wall with that flat expression they all wore now. She didn't turn her head as I left. The North Corridor smelled like stagnant water and rust. My boots echoed on concrete as I walked, flashlight beam cutting through darkness. The overhead fixtures didn't reach anymore. Half the bulbs had burned out months ago, and nobody'd bothered replacing them in a section that was technically decommissioned. Pipes ran along the ceiling, some of them sweating condensation that dripped steady onto the floor. Water pooled in the low spots. The filtration chamber itself was massive, 30 feet across, circular, with a vaulted ceiling that disappeared into shadows above my flashlight's range. The filtration tanks stood empty. Just skeletal frameworks of metal and crumbling concrete where the processing membranes used to be. Catwalks crisscrossed overhead. Safety railings spotted with orange rust. Everything echoed. The drip of water. My breathing. The scuff of my boots on grit. I swept the flashlight across the walls looking for anything unusual. Graffiti, maybe. Equipment marks. Something that'd explain why every missing worker's route had included this space. Found it on the eastern wall, about chest height. My employee ID number. 4 digits carved into the concrete. Fresh, too. No dust in the grooves. Edges still sharp where the material had been cut away. Below the number, 2 messages carved in the same precise lettering. Report for processing. 7th day, 7th hour, 7th valve. My hand started shaking. Had to grip the flashlight with both hands to keep the beam steady. I ran my fingers over the carved numbers. The grooves were perfect. Uniform depth, exactly a 1/4 inch. Edges crisp as machine work. Corners meeting at precise 90-degree angles. The kind of cuts you'd get from a router or engraving bit. Not a chisel or knife. Not something a person could do by hand. Not with this level of consistency. I checked the rest of the wall, found more numbers, more ID codes, recognized some of them. Kim's number, Marcus's, Blake's. 11 sets of numbers total arranged in a column. The 3 who hadn't come back yet, their numbers were there too, and mine at the bottom, the newest addition. The concrete dust probably still settling when I'd walked in. Someone had been watching my routes, tracking my movements. Decided I was next. My stomach went cold. I backed away from the wall, flashlight beam jerking across the chamber, looking for cameras, for movement, for whoever or whatever had carved those numbers while I'd been working my shifts, walking these corridors, completely unaware I'd been selected. The chamber was empty. Just me and the dripping water and those numbers on the wall. That's when I thought about Frank. Frank Hudson had drowned 3 weeks ago. 45 years old, 15 years at the plant, knew every inch of the facility better than anyone. The kind of supervisor who actually gave a damn about his crew, who'd check on you during long shifts, who'd cover your breaks without complaint. Square-jawed guy with graying hair and a scar on his left temple from a pipe fitting that had come loose back in 2012. Blake Green had been missing 4 days when Frank went looking for him. Blake's family had been calling constantly, his mother crying on the phone to Logan, begging for answers. Frank couldn't stand it anymore. Told Logan he was going to search the main reservoir, said Blake's last known location was near the intake valves and maybe he'd fallen in, maybe there was still time. I'd been on shift when they pulled Frank out. His body had been floating face down near the north intake pipes, waterlogged coveralls dragging him lower in the water. EMTs worked on him for 20 minutes, but his lungs were full, his lips blue, his eyes open and staring. They pronounced him dead at 11:47 p.m. Accidental drowning, the report said. Supervisor exceeded safety protocols by entering restricted water access area without proper equipment or backup personnel. Logan had the reservoir drained for inspection after that. Sheriff's Department sent divers down first, looking for Blake's body, expecting to find him somewhere in that dark water where Frank had died searching. But Blake walked out of the employee entrance the next morning. I'd been heading in for my shift when I saw him. 7:30 a.m., sun barely up. Gravel parking lot still empty except for Logan's truck and the night crew vehicles. Blake came walking out through the main doors, wearing the same blue coveralls he'd disappeared in 4 days earlier, completely dry. Not a drop of water on him, not a stain, not a wrinkle. Hair neat, boots clean, moving with that same mechanical precision all the returned workers had. I'd stopped dead in my tracks. Blake, he'd turned his head toward me, smooth motion, no recognition in his dark eyes. "Jordan Cruz, you are arriving for your scheduled shift." "Where the hell have you been? Frank died looking for you." "Supervisor Frank Hudson is waiting at intake valve 7. Same flat monotone, same emotionless delivery. He has completed processing and will resume duties shortly." My throat had gone tight. "Frank's dead. They pulled him out of the reservoir yesterday." "Intake valve 7, Blake repeated. He'd walked past me toward his vehicle, and that's when I'd seen it. The blue keycard clipped to his belt. Same as Kim's, same as all the others who'd come back. He'd driven away without another word. They'd found Frank's body, buried him 4 days later. His wife and 2 daughters at the funeral, his crew standing in the rain at the cemetery. I'd been there. I'd watched them lower the casket into the ground. But Blake said Frank was waiting at intake valve 7, the same valve that didn't exist, the same one mentioned in the protocols on those blue keycards, the same one carved into the wall behind me in this abandoned chamber. I stood there in the darkness, flashlight beam pointed at nothing, pieces clicking together in my head. This wasn't random, wasn't accidents, wasn't coincidence, wasn't workers wandering off or having mental breaks or running away from their lives. This was systematic, coordinated. Someone or something selecting workers, carving their numbers into walls, programming them with protocols and blue keycards and identical mechanical movements, taking them somewhere for processing, that word carved in the concrete, report for processing, like we were equipment getting upgraded or repaired, and whatever was doing this had already marked me. My number on the wall, fresh cuts in the concrete, 7th day, 7th hour, 7th valve. I needed to get out of this chamber, needed to show someone what I'd found, needed to make Logan look at this wall, make him see the pattern, make him understand his facility was doing something to his workers. But my legs wouldn't move. I just stood there staring at those carved numbers, at my ID code at the bottom of the list, understanding for the first time that the disappearances weren't ending. They were just getting started. Kim found me during rounds 3 weeks after she'd vanished. I was checking the secondary filtration gauges, clipboard in hand, scanning pressure readings that all sat exactly where they should. Normal. Everything normal except the 11 carved numbers waiting in the north chamber and the 8 workers who moved through the facility without blinking or breathing hard or doing anything that made them look human anymore. Footsteps echoed from the east corridor. That same mechanical rhythm I'd learned to recognize. Precise intervals, no variation, no shuffle or scuff. I didn't turn around. Didn't want to see which one of them it was. Jordan Cruz. My hands went still on the clipboard. Kim's voice, but not. Same pitch, same slight rasp she'd always had from too many cigarettes on break, but stripped of everything that made it hers. Flat. Empty. I turned. She stood 15 feet away under the overhead fluorescents, wearing clean blue coveralls that looked freshly pressed. Her black hair fell exactly to her shoulders, perfectly straight, and her dark eyes fixed on me without blinking. The blue keycard hung from her belt. Kim, you need to stop going to the North Chamber. The words came out measured, evenly spaced. They process you there. My throat went tight. Who processes people? The systems. She took 3 steps forward, each one covering the exact same distance. 7-day protocol. Day 1, they mark your designation. Day 2, they map your patterns. Day 3, they calibrate the frequency. Day 4, they begin integration. Day 5, they test compliance. Day 6, they finalize neural pathways. Day 7, you report to intake valve 7 for completion. I set the clipboard on the nearest pipe junction. My pulse hammered in my ears, but I kept my voice steady. There is no intake valve 7. Yes, no inflection. There is. Where? Kim's head tilted 15 degrees to the left, held there for 2 seconds, then straightened. Something flickered behind her eyes. Pain, maybe, or the ghost of whoever she'd been before. Below the North Chamber, 3 levels down, the old municipal tunnels they sealed in 1976. The plant had been built on top of the original city water system, I knew that much. The old network of brick tunnels and hand-dug channels that had served Westfield before modern treatment existed. Management claimed they'd been filled with concrete decades ago, made structurally sound and inaccessible. You've been down there. Yes. That flicker again, stronger this time. Her right hand twitched, fingers curling and uncurling in a spasm that looked involuntary. 4 days. They kept me 4 days. Who's they? The systems. Her voice cracked on the second word, a hairline fracture in the monotone. The machinery. The protocol. I don't... She stopped. Her jaw clenched. I don't remember faces. Just the processing room. Steel tables. Injection ports. The sound of the calibration equipment cycling through frequencies until they found the one that made my thoughts stop being mine. Jesus Christ. My stomach dropped, but I stayed put, feet planted. What do they want? Compliance, efficiency, workers who don't question or resist or report. Kim's hand spasmed again, harder. Infrastructure access, control points, they're building a network. Of what? People. Of processing sites. Her eyes met mine, and for half a second I saw Kim Thompson in there. The woman who'd taught me the maintenance rotation my first week. Who'd laughed too loud at terrible jokes and always smelled like motor oil and spearmint gum. Then the flatness returned. Westfield isn't the only facility. They're operating at water treatment plants across 3 states, selecting workers with the right access, the right clearances, the right routes through restricted areas. My mind raced. 3 states, multiple facilities. That meant coordination, resources, planning that went back months, maybe years. Why are you telling me this? Kim's whole body went rigid, muscles locked, tendons standing out on her neck. When she spoke, the words came out strangled, fighting against something internal. Because I can hear them calling me back. Every shift, every hour. The machinery in the lower levels, it transmits on frequencies that penetrate bone, skull resonance. I hear my designation every 73 minutes, and I have to fight not to go down there right now. Her voice broke completely on the last 2 words. She sucked in air through clenched teeth. First real breath I'd seen her take. They're calling your designation too, she whispered. Employee 7294. Every 90 minutes. The transmission started 3 days ago. The carved numbers in the North Chamber. My ID at the bottom of the list. I haven't heard anything. You will. Kim's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist, fingers cold and grip too strong. When you start hearing the tone, you'll feel it in your teeth first, then behind your eyes. Then you'll know exactly where to go, and you won't be able to stop yourself from going there. I pulled back, but she held on. That inhuman strength I'd seen in the others when they moved equipment that should have taken 2 people. Let go. She released me immediately, stumbled backward 2 steps. Her face contorted, pain, confusion, something fighting against invisible restraints. I'm not supposed to warn anyone. The protocols forbid interference with processing selection. But I can still remember. Her breath hitched. I can still remember my mother's voice on the phone and not knowing who she was. I can remember standing in my own apartment and feeling nothing. No recognition. Just walls and furniture and a stranger crying in front of me. The families. Rachel Foster's husband screaming in the parking lot. Kim's mother calling Logan 16 times. How do I stop it? You can't. Flat again, mechanical. Once they mark your designation, the protocol initiates automatically. 7 days. You're on day 4. 4 days since I'd found the wall. 4 days since my number had appeared. My hands went numb. There has to be a way to... There isn't. Kim's jaw trembled, but her voice stayed empty. I tried. Blake tried. Marcus tried. The systems are embedded 3 levels down with independent power sources and network connectivity we can't trace. They've been here longer than any of us, longer than this facility's been operational. Then why tell me anything? She looked at me and something human flickered one more time behind the mechanical blankness. So you know what's coming. So you can tell someone who might stop it before they process the whole plant. Then she turned and walked away. Footsteps returning to that perfect mechanical rhythm. I spent the rest of my shift trying not to think about frequencies and skull resonance, and my designation being called from 3 levels below. Failed completely. Every pipe rattle made me freeze. Every distant hum from the equipment made my teeth ache. Got home at 7:30, didn't sleep. Sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and searched. Started with missing workers, water treatment facilities, unexplained disappearances. Found 6 articles from the past year, scattered across Illinois, Indiana, Missouri. 3 employees vanished from a plant outside Springfield, returned a week later. Management called it stress leave. 2 workers disappeared from a facility in Gary, came back, changed. Family members quoted saying their relatives didn't recognize them anymore. 4 missing from a treatment center near St. Louis, all returned within 10 days. Same pattern, same timeline, same impossible explanations that nobody questioned. I expanded the search, added filtration plants, pumping stations, reservoir facilities. 14 more incidents across 3 states. Workers vanishing during night shifts, security footage showing nothing, bodies never found, or people returning fundamentally altered. Always infrastructure. Always water systems. Always employees with access to restricted areas and sealed sections. My coffee went cold while I read. One article from an Indianapolis station mentioned families forming a support group. Loved ones who'd returned, but weren't the same. The reporter had interviewed a woman whose husband worked at a municipal pumping station, disappeared for 5 days, came back speaking in monotone and moving with mechanical precision. She'd filed a missing person report even though he was sitting in their living room because that's not my husband anymore. I clicked through to the support group's website, 43 families, spanning 8 facilities across Illinois, Indiana, and Missouri, all within the past 18 months. 43 workers processed and returned. This wasn't random. This wasn't isolated. Someone was running a coordinated operation across multiple states, using water treatment infrastructure as cover, selecting employees with the right access, processing them in hidden levels beneath old municipal systems, returning them as something controllable, compliant, efficient, human trafficking maybe, or something worse, turning people into programmable assets while leaving them functional enough that nobody looked too close. And it was spreading. The earliest incident I found was dated 14 months ago. The most recent was last week. I sat back from the laptop, hands shaking. Westfield wasn't an isolated problem. We were one node in a network that stretched across 3 states and was actively expanding. Mia called me at 3 in the afternoon, voice tight in a way that made my chest constrict. "There's someone watching the hospital." I'd been awake maybe 2 hours after my shift, sitting at the kitchen table with cold coffee and my notes spread across the surface. "Who?" "Kim Thompson." A pause. Static on the line. She's standing in the parking lot, just standing there, staring at the employee entrance. My hand tightened around the phone. Kim worked nights, same as me. She should have been home, sleeping off her shift, not standing in a hospital parking lot 40 minutes from the plant. "You sure it's her?" "I've seen her at the Christmas parties, Jordan. It's her." Mia's breathing had gone shallow. "She's been there for an hour. Security asked if she needed help and she didn't respond. Just kept staring." I was already moving, grabbing my keys off the counter. "Stay inside. I'm coming to get you." The drive to County General took 35 minutes. I spent them checking the rearview mirror, watching for blue coveralls or mechanical gates or any sign that Kim hadn't come alone. The highway stretched empty behind me. Cornfields on both sides, dead stalks brown against gray sky. Mia met me at the side entrance, still wearing her scrubs, her purse clutched against her chest. Her face had gone pale, green eyes too wide. She's gone now, left maybe 10 minutes ago. "Which direction?" "Just walked to the road and kept going." Mia climbed into the passenger seat, hands shaking as she buckled the seatbelt. "Jordan, what the hell is happening?" I pulled out of the lot, heading east instead of back toward town. Didn't answer right away because I didn't know how to explain carved numbers and processing protocols and workers who'd stopped being human. The people at the plant who disappeared, they're not right when they come back. Not right how? Not right like they're not themselves anymore. I merged onto the highway, pushing 10 miles over the limit. And now they're following you. She went quiet for 3 miles. I kept checking the mirrors. Nothing behind us but a semi and a sedan with out-of-state plates. "Where are we going?" Mia finally asked. "Your sister's place. Oakmont County. Another 40 minutes east across the county line, far enough that maybe whatever was coordinating the returned workers wouldn't track her there. You can stay with her for a few days, until I figure this out." Mia's sister lived in a subdivision with identical houses and curved streets, named after trees that didn't grow in Illinois. Rachel answered the door with a toddler on her hip, expression shifting from surprise to concern when she saw Mia's face. I didn't stay long. Just helped carry Mia's overnight bag inside, kissed her forehead, told her I'd call tomorrow. Drove back west with the sun setting behind me, painting the sky rust and amber. I worked my shift that night. Kim moved through the facility with her mechanical precision, never looking at me, never acknowledging what she'd done that afternoon. The blue keycard hung from her belt. Her footsteps echoed in the corridors with that distinctive rhythm. Too even, too measured, like something had calibrated her gait down to the millisecond. Mia texted me at 11 the next morning. 3 words. "They found me." I called immediately. She answered on the first ring, voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus Webb is outside Rachel's house." My stomach dropped. "You sure?" "He's sitting in a car across the street. Been there since 9. She was breathing fast, panicked. "Jordan, I never told anyone at the plant where Rachel lives. I've never even mentioned her name at work." I was already pulling on my jeans, phone wedged against my shoulder. "Pack your things. I'm coming to get you." "Where am I supposed to go?" Her voice cracked. "They found me 40 miles away, in a town I've never been to with my sister whose address isn't in any of my paperwork. How did they find me? I didn't have an answer. Couldn't think of one that made sense. The returned workers moved with inhuman precision and spoke in monotone voices and carried blue keycards that referenced impossible valves, but tracking someone to an unlisted address in another county that required resources, databases, surveillance, coordination beyond what 8 processed employees should possess. "I'll be there in 40 minutes, I said. "Stay inside." The drive felt longer this time. I kept running scenarios, trying to work out how they'd located her. Mia's phone? No, she'd left it at my place, using Rachel's landline to call me. License plate readers? Possible, but that meant access to traffic cameras and the ability to process that data faster than seemed reasonable. Someone following us yesterday? I'd checked the mirrors, watched for tails, seen nothing. Marcus's car was gone by the time I arrived, but that didn't make me feel better. It meant he'd confirmed her location and reported back. Meant they knew exactly where she was and had decided that knowing was enough. Mia threw her bag in the back seat and climbed in without speaking. Her hands were still shaking. "We'll go to a hotel," I said. "Pay cash. Use a fake name. Somewhere they can't track." She nodded, but her expression said she didn't believe it would work. I drove south this time, crossing into the next county, then the one after that. Found a highway motel with vacancy signs and parking lot potholes and a clerk who didn't ask for ID when I paid with 320s from my wallet. Room 12, ground floor facing the access road. Mia sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the carpet. "What do they want with me?" "They want me." I stood by the window, watching the parking lot through a gap in the curtains. "You're just leverage." Leverage for what? I thought about the carved numbers in the north chamber, my employee ID at the bottom of the list, 7 days, 7 hours, 7th valve. They want me to report for processing. Processing. She repeated the word slowly, testing it. What does that mean? It means they do something to you that makes you stop being yourself. I let the curtain fall back into place. Kim warned me, told me what happens. They take you below the facility and run you through some kind of procedure until your thoughts become controllable. Mia's face had gone white. That's not possible. I've watched 8 people come back different. Same faces, same voices, but everything else gone. I sat down beside her, close enough that our shoulders touched. And now they're using you to get to me. Following you, tracking you, showing me they can reach you anywhere. She turned to look at me, eyes wet. "So what do we do?" I didn't have an answer for that either. We stayed at the motel for 2 days. I paid for another night each morning, cash from the ATM down the road. Mia called in sick to work. I did the same, first time in 3 years. We kept the curtains drawn and ordered pizza from a place that delivered, and I watched the parking lot every time headlights swept across the window. On the 3rd morning, Mia went to get ice from the machine outside. She was gone less than 2 minutes. When she came back, her hands were empty. No ice bucket, just her phone, screen lit with a new text message. "Look," she said. The message had no sender name, just a number I didn't recognize. But the content made my blood freeze. Jordan Cruz designation 7294 report intake valve. 7 compliance required Mia Maldonado safety-dependent immediate processing. They had her phone number, knew which motel we'd chosen, knew we were together, and they were making the threat explicit now. Report for processing or Mia wouldn't be safe. I sat on the bed, phone in my hands, reading the message 3 more times, each word precise, clinical, the same flat effect as the returned worker's speech. "They're not just following us," I said quietly. "They're tracking us in real time. Probably have been since the start." Mia wrapped her arms around herself. "How?" I thought about blue keycards and carved numbers and workers who moved with mechanical precision. Thought about Kim grabbing my wrist with inhuman strength, and Blake appearing 4 days after drowning with clean, dry coveralls. Thought about 43 families across 8 facilities and missing workers in 3 states, and coordination that required infrastructure I couldn't see. I don't know. My voice sounded hollow. But they've got resources beyond what 8 changed people should have. Database access, surveillance capabilities, maybe more. The net was closing. I could feel it tightening around us, options narrowing with each hour that passed. They'd found Mia at the hospital, at her sister's house, at a random motel paid for with cash. Running wasn't working. Hiding wasn't working. Whatever system was processing workers at the plant, it had reach and resources that made escape impossible. I looked at Mia, at her frightened eyes and shaking hands, and understood we were up against something organized, something systematic. Not random victims or isolated incidents, but an operation with extensive capabilities and frightening reach. Time was running out, and I was running out of options. I left Mia at the motel with the door locked and drove back to Westfield alone. The highway stretched empty under gray morning sky, cornfields dead and brown on both sides. 7 in the morning, early enough that the night shift would be ending, late enough that day crew hadn't started yet. The facility sat quiet when I pulled into the gravel lot. 3 cars remained by the employee entrance: Kim's sedan, Marcus's truck, Blake's hatchback. The others must have already left. I cut the engine and sat there with my hands on the wheel, watching condensation drip down the windshield. Should have brought someone. Should have called Logan, or the sheriff, or anyone who could witness what I was about to find. Didn't matter now. I got out and crossed the lot, gravel crunching under my boots. The employee door stood propped open with a rubber wedge. Inside, the break room sat empty. Coffee pot cold on the burner, assignment board blank. The overhead fluorescents hummed their constant 60-cycle drone. The north corridor waited past the equipment lockers. I'd walked it 100 times in 3 weeks, always during my shift, always with my flashlight and my excuses ready. Walking it now felt different. Exposed. The burned-out bulbs left pools of shadow between the working lights, and water dripped steady from the ceiling pipes into puddles that never dried. The door to the north chamber stood open. I stopped 3 feet from the threshold. Could see the edge of the door frame, the concrete floor inside, the skeletal frameworks of the old filtration equipment catching weak light from somewhere deeper in the room. My carved number waited in there. 7294. Fresh cuts in old concrete, machine perfect and deliberate. I stepped through. The chamber opened around me, 30 feet across, vaulted ceiling disappearing into darkness overhead. The catwalks formed geometric shadows against the walls. Equipment frameworks stood like ribs of some massive dead thing, rust-spotted and skeletal. They were already there. All 8 of them arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the chamber floor. Kim Thompson, Marcus Webb, Blake Green, Sarah Chen, David Rodriguez, Chris Martin, Amanda Price, Rachel Foster. Standing equidistant from each other, faces turned toward the empty center of their formation, blue keycards hanging from their belts. I froze just inside the doorway. None of them moved. Didn't turn their heads, didn't shift their weight, didn't blink. Just stood there in their geometric arrangement, breathing in perfect unison, chests rising and falling with mechanical precision. Then Kim's head rotated toward me. Smooth motion. No preliminary shift of shoulders or hips, just her head turning on her neck with the steady movement of something on bearings. "Jordan Cruise designation 7294, she said. Flat voice. No inflection. The others turned then. All 7 heads rotating in synchronized motion, 8 pairs of eyes fixing on me with the same empty focus. My throat went tight. Wanted to back through the doorway, run for my car, drive back to Mia and keep going until we hit a state line. Stayed put instead. Hands at my sides, feet planted. "You have entered the designated processing area," Marcus said. Same monotone, Same absence of anything human in the cadence. They moved then, all 8 of them stepping inward, closing the circle, creating a new formation. 8-pointed star, perfect geometry, me standing outside their pattern. Their footsteps hit the concrete in absolute unison. Single sound. 8 bodies moving as one mechanism. They stopped when the circle had compressed to 12 feet across, still leaving me outside it, still watching me with those flat, focused stares. We were optimized, Blake said. 7-day reconditioning protocol, Sarah added. Day 1 designation, Chris continued. Day 2 pattern mapping, Amanda. Day 3 frequency calibration, Rachel. Day 4 integration commencement, David. Day 5 compliance testing, Kim. Day 6 neural pathway finalization, Marcus. Day 7 processing completion, Blake again. They spoke without pause between speakers, words flowing in continuous sequence like different mouths forming one sentence. My stomach turned over. This wasn't 8 people talking. This was something else using 8 voices. What the hell did they do to you? The words came out rough. Kim stepped forward. Single smooth motion, breaking the geometric formation. The others remained motionless. Optimization removes inefficiency, she said. Emotional variance, decision paralysis, sleep requirements, nutritional dependency, interpersonal conflict, all variables that compromise operational effectiveness. She tilted her head 15 degrees. Precise angle, nothing organic about the movement. The 7-day protocol achieves complete behavioral reconditioning through progressive neurological intervention. You're talking about brainwashing, I said. Inaccurate terminology. Marcus stepped forward now, joining Kim. Brain structure remains intact. Synaptic pathways are reinforced. Neural implants provide guidance frameworks and protocol enforcement. Rachel moved next, then David, then the others. They closed in, forming a semicircle around me, backing me toward the chamber wall. My shoulders hit concrete. The carved numbers weighted 3 feet to my left, 11 ID codes in their precise column, mine at the bottom. Beneath intake valve 7, Sarah said. Corporate research laboratory occupies 3 sub-level floors. Private contractors, Amanda continued. Federal funding through shell organizations. Illegal human enhancement experimentation, Chris added. Neural implant development and behavioral conditioning refinement. Kim moved closer. Could smell her now. Nothing. No sweat, no coffee, no laundry detergent. Just the faint ozone scent of the facility itself. Water treatment infrastructure provides optimal cover, she said. Hazardous industrial environment. History of workplace accidents. Limited personnel. Restricted access areas. Geographic isolation. Authorities attribute disappearances to industrial incidents, Marcus said. Sheriff investigations find no evidence of foul play. Families accept official explanations. Returned workers resume normal employment patterns. My hands pressed flat against the wall behind me. You're saying someone's running experiments down there, using plant workers as test subjects. Correct, they said in unison. 8 voices, 1 word, perfect synchronization. The sound of it crawled up my spine. Blake stepped forward. The 7-day protocol eliminates cognitive inefficiencies through systematic intervention. Day 1 establishes baseline neural patterns. Day 2 maps decision-making pathways and emotional response triggers. Day 3 calibrates implant frequencies to individual brain chemistry. Day 4 initiates behavioral modification through targeted electrical stimulation, Sarah continued. Day 5 tests compliance through increasingly complex instruction sets. Day 6 finalizes neural pathway reconstruction, replacing autonomous decision-making with algorithmic response patterns. Day 7 completes integration, Kim said. Subject emerges optimized. Productivity increases 47%. Error rates approach 0. Interpersonal conflicts cease. absenteeism eliminated, personnel management costs reduced to negligible levels. I stared at her. At the thing wearing Kim's face, and speaking with Kim's voice but containing nothing of the woman who used to complain about her mother's phone calls and take her coffee with too much sugar. They put implants in your heads, I said, voice barely steady. They rewired you, turned you into, what, robots? Inaccurate comparison. Amanda tilted her head with that same 15-degree precision. Cognitive function remains human, enhanced, optimized for task completion and protocol compliance. Free will redirected toward productive outcomes. Free will redirected. I heard my voice rise. You mean they took it away? The 7-day protocol includes voluntary consent procedures, Rachel said. My laugh came out harsh. Bullshit. Kim told me people disappear. They don't volunteer to get kidnapped and brain damaged. Subjects remember volunteering, David said. Consent memories integrate during day 6 neural reconstruction. Legal documentation generated retroactively. All procedures conducted with full subject cooperation as recorded in official files. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. They programmed the memories, made people remember agreeing to something that happened to them against their will, then used those false memories to cover the whole operation. That's not consent, I said. That's... Corporate terminology designates the process as voluntary career advancement, Marcus interrupted. Subjects receive enhanced capabilities, improved health metrics, and guaranteed employment stability. Compensation packages reflect optimization benefits. Kim moved closer still. 6 inches from my face now, eyes empty and focused. You have been designated for processing, Jordan Cruz. The 7-day protocol will commence upon your arrival at intake valve 7. Resistance introduces unnecessary complications. Compliance ensures optimal outcomes. I looked at her, at them. 8 people I'd worked with, eaten lunch with, complained about management with, all of them standing there with their perfect posture and synchronized breathing and flat, emotionless voices. They weren't people anymore, not really. Something had been done to them, something surgical and systematic and permanent. Neural implants, behavioral conditioning, memory reconstruction. Turned them into something that looked human and sounded human, but operated on algorithms instead of thoughts. Something between human and machine. My designation waited carved in the wall beside me, and these 8 optimized workers had surrounded me in their geometric formation to deliver their programmed message. They stood there watching me with empty eyes, waiting for compliance. Waiting for me to walk down to intake valve 7 and let whatever was down there turn me into the same hollow thing they'd become. The 8 workers stood in their semicircle formation, blocking any path to the door. Kim's head remained angled toward me with that mechanical precision, her eyes focused but empty. Why operators? The question came out before I could stop it. Why target people who work the systems? Plant operators possess comprehensive knowledge of water infrastructure systems. Kim's voice held no inflection. Distribution networks, valve configurations, access protocols, emergency procedures. This knowledge base proves essential for facility navigation and subject recruitment. Marcus took a half-step forward, hands at his sides. Optimized workers require guidance to intake valve 7 during initial processing stages. Operators understand subsurface infrastructure mapping. Operators identify valve locations instinctively. My back pressed against the concrete wall. The carved numbers sat 3 feet to my left. 11 ID codes in perfect vertical alignment. My designation at the bottom. Operators also maintain security clearances, Sarah Chen said. Her voice carried the same flat tone as the others. Access to restricted areas, familiarity with abandoned sections, knowledge of maintenance schedules and patrol routes. I understood then. They needed us because we knew the bones of these places, the old tunnels, the sealed chambers, the infrastructure nobody else bothered mapping anymore. An accountant couldn't find intake valve 7. A manager couldn't navigate the 1976 municipal tunnels 3 levels down, but someone who'd spent years checking gauges and reading schematics and crawling through access corridors, we were the keys to their own locked doors. How long? My voice sounded thin in the vaulted chamber. How long has the laboratory been operating? Primary facility activation occurred 6 years ago. David Rodriguez spoke without moving. Initial processing protocols commenced 4 years, 11 months ago. Subject optimization achieved stable results after 18 months of calibration. 6 years. I'd been working at this plant for 3 years, and the laboratory had already been running beneath my feet for twice that long. Enhanced workers maintain standard employment and personal relationships, Blake said. Subject families report concern, but accept explanations of workplace stress or medical conditions. Returned workers appear recovered from accidents. Authorities classify disappearances as resolved cases. Rachel Foster's husband had stood in the parking lot crying about how his wife didn't recognize their daughter Emma. Kim's mother had called Logan 16 times in 1 week, but to everyone else, the sheriff, the county, the state labor board, these were just workers who'd gone missing and come back. Traumatized, maybe, changed by their ordeals, but alive and functional. Nobody investigated recovered victims. The laboratory produced 43 optimized workers across 8 facilities in the past 18 months, Amanda Price said. Her hands hung motionless at her sides. Each facility operates independently while coordinating through encrypted network channels. Enhanced employees recruit additional subjects using identical protocols. 43 workers, 8 facilities. I'd found those numbers in my research 2 days ago, reading family support group websites at my kitchen table. But hearing it spoken aloud in this abandoned chamber made the scope real in a way the computer screen hadn't. Show me. I don't know why I said it. Maybe because seeing the entrance would make it concrete. Maybe because part of me still didn't believe there was really a laboratory 3 levels down beneath a valve that shouldn't exist. Kim turned without hesitation, walking toward the eastern wall with that too smooth gait. The others followed in synchronized movements, their footsteps creating an eerie rhythm against the concrete floor. I stayed pressed against the wall for 3 seconds before my legs moved on their own, following at a distance. The eastern section of the chamber held the oldest equipment. Filtration frameworks from the original 1976 installation, before the city upgraded to the southern system. Rust covered everything. Kim stopped in front of a support column, her fingers finding a recessed panel I'd walked past 100 times without noticing. She pressed something. A section of the floor shifted. Not dramatically, not with grinding gears or dramatic lights. Just a smooth, quiet displacement of a concrete panel 3 feet square, revealing a steel ladder descending into darkness. LED strips lined the shaft walls, providing clean white illumination that had no business existing in an abandoned chamber. Intake valve 7 access point, Marcus said. Connects to municipal tunnel network. 3 levels descent. Laboratory occupies former pump station chambers, repurposed for enhancement research. I stared at the opening. The LED strips continued down farther than I could see, perfectly maintained and clearly drawing power from somewhere. The shaft looked newer than the chamber around it. Clean edges, no rust, modern construction hidden beneath a disguised floor panel. Corporate contractors identified water treatment facilities as optimal research locations 4 years ago, Chris Martin said. His voice carried the same algorithmic precision as the others. Industrial environments provide cover for subject disappearances. Hazardous work conditions justify accidents. Underground infrastructure offers secure laboratory space isolated from public access. Federal funding flows through shell organizations, Sarah added. Research classified as infrastructure security enhancement. Human optimization protocols designated as operator safety training. Documentation satisfies regulatory oversight while concealing true experimental scope. They were using our own infrastructure against us. Water treatment plants existed in every city, every county. Underground tunnels connected them to municipal systems nobody thought about until something broke. Dangerous work meant accidents happened. And federal money for infrastructure security? That funding pipeline never ran dry. The enhancement program has expanded to 22 facilities across 6 states in the current operational quarter, Kim said. She stood beside the open shaft, her blue keycard catching the overhead lights. Optimized workers at each location recruit additional subjects. Processing capacity increases by 12% monthly. Network growth follows exponential progression. 22 facilities, 6 states, and growing 12% every month. I thought about the articles I'd found. Illinois, Indiana, Missouri. Workers disappearing and returning changed. Families starting support groups because their loved ones didn't recognize them anymore. 43 people had become this. 43 families destroyed. But if they were at 22 facilities now, recruiting more every month, how many? My throat felt tight. How many workers total? Current network comprises 137 optimized employees, David said. Projected expansion targets 400 subjects within 12 months. Regional saturation estimated at 1,800 workers across infrastructure systems within 3 years. 137 people already processed. Already walking around with neural implants and algorithmic responses, looking like themselves, but running on corporate programming instead of human thought. 1,800 workers within 3 years. That wasn't an experiment anymore. That was an invasion. Optimized employees maintain standard work performance while recruiting new subjects, Rachel said. Enhanced workers identify candidates through behavioral observation and facility access patterns. Selection criteria prioritize operators with infrastructure knowledge and restricted area clearance. I remembered the carved numbers in the wall. 11 IDs arranged in vertical sequence. Kim at the top, the first one processed back in early September. My designation at the bottom, added most recently. They'd been watching me for weeks, tracking my routes, noting which chambers I entered, which tunnels I used as shortcuts, how often I checked the north filtration equipment, building a profile of my movements until they carved my number into concrete and started the 7-day countdown. Each optimized worker recruits an average of 2.3 additional subjects annually, Blake said. Network expansion operates independently of laboratory oversight. Enhanced employees execute recruitment protocols without external instruction. That's when it clicked. Really clicked, in a way that made my stomach drop. They didn't need the laboratory anymore. Not really. The corporate contractors had built the facility, installed the equipment, processed the first batch of workers. But now the optimized employees were doing the recruiting themselves. Finding candidates, carving numbers into walls, delivering subjects to intake valve 7 for processing. The laboratory just ran the procedures. The enhanced workers fed it new people. It's self-sustaining, I said. My voice sounded hollow in the chamber. You don't need anyone running it anymore. You just keep bringing more workers and they bring more after that. Correct, Kim said. The enhancement program operates as a closed recruitment cycle. Optimized workers identify and deliver subjects. Laboratory processes new candidates. Enhanced employees return to facilities and continue recruitment. System expands without requiring external management. Human trafficking. That's what this was. Not research, not enhancement. They'd created a system that kidnapped workers, destroyed their minds, and turned them into recruiters who'd kidnap more workers. And they disguised it as workplace accidents at industrial facilities where dangerous conditions made disappearances believable. Nobody investigated resolved cases. Nobody looked twice at workers who came back after a few days missing. And the optimized employees appeared functional enough that families might worry but authorities wouldn't intervene. The system fed itself, and it was spreading across the entire infrastructure network. Water treatment, power plants, municipal systems, anywhere with underground access and hazardous conditions, anywhere workers might vanish and return, changed without raising too many questions. Regional infrastructure network provides unlimited expansion capacity, Marcus said. Water treatment facilities connect to power stations, sewage systems, industrial complexes. Optimized workers transfer between facilities. Enhanced employees spread protocols to new locations. Network growth continues indefinitely. Indefinitely. I stared at the open shaft with its clean LED lighting and modern construction hidden beneath an abandoned chamber. They weren't going to stop. They couldn't stop. The system was designed to expand forever, consuming workers and converting them into recruitment tools, spreading through every industrial facility with underground infrastructure. And I was next. Kim stepped aside from the open panel with that too-smooth movement they all shared now. The steel ladder descended into clean white light, LED strips running down both sides of the shaft. Professional installation, corporate money. Marcus moved to the other side of the opening. His hand swept toward the ladder in a gesture that should have been welcoming but carried all the warmth of a mechanical arm on an assembly line. "Descent is recommended," Kim said. Her voice still sounded like Kim's voice. Same pitch, same rhythm I'd heard 1,000 times during shift changes. Just emptied out. Resistance creates inefficiency. Optimization protocols eliminate ethical concerns regarding program implementation. I stared at that ladder. Rungs evenly spaced, metal clean despite being hidden behind a concrete panel in an 80-year-old facility. Someone had maintained this access point, kept it functional. The process addresses psychological barriers, Blake added from behind me. Neural reconstruction removes uncertainty. Enhanced employees report satisfaction with optimization outcomes. Report satisfaction. Christ. They'd been turned into something that couldn't even say, "I'm happy" anymore, just clinical assessments of their own rewired brains. My hands were shaking. I shoved them in my coverall pocket so the 8 workers wouldn't see. Wouldn't matter. They probably had protocols for identifying stress responses, cataloging my fear like data points in whatever algorithm ran their decisions now. The choice sat in front of me with all the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Run. Get to my truck. Drive to the sheriff's office. Try explaining that 8 co-workers got brain implants in a secret laboratory under the water plant. Sound completely insane. Become another missing person case when I inevitably disappeared during my next shift, or my next trip to the grocery store, or my next visit to see Mia. They'd found her at Rachel's house, found her at a random highway motel we'd paid for in cash. Running just meant vanishing on their timeline instead of mine, or descend that ladder. See the laboratory with my own eyes. Understand exactly what they did down there. What equipment they used, how many people were involved. Gather evidence that might actually mean something, if I could somehow get it out. Get it to someone who'd believe me. Except I wouldn't get it out. I'd come back up this ladder in 4 days wearing the same coveralls, moving with that mechanical precision, speaking in that flat monotone. I'd text Mia that everything was fine. Show up at her apartment with empty eyes and a blue keycard on my belt. Stop recognizing her face. Stop remembering why I'd ever cared about her in the first place. Then I'd start recruiting. 2.3 subjects per year, Blake had said. I'd identify workers with the right access, the right routes, carve their ID numbers into concrete walls, deliver them to intake valve 7 just like these 8 were trying to deliver me right now. The humming reached me then. Faint but distinct, rising from the shaft opening. Machinery running 3 levels down, steady and patient. Industrial equipment built for processing. Processing people. The sound had a rhythm to it. Not the irregular clatter of the filtration systems I knew, but something smoother. Cyclic. Medical equipment maybe, or computers, or whatever the hell they used to crack open skulls and install implants that turned operators into algorithms. That machinery was waiting for me specifically. Jordan Cruz, designation 7294. My number was already carved into the wall. My 7-day protocol would start the moment I reached the bottom of that ladder. Day 1 establishes neural baselines. Day 2 maps decision pathways. My legs felt weak. I locked my knees to keep standing. The workers hadn't moved. They stood in their positions around the opening, patient as statues. They could wait all day, all week. Time didn't mean the same thing to them anymore, just another variable in whatever programming ran behind their eyes. I thought about Frank Hudson, 45 years old, 15 years at this plant. He'd gone looking for Blake when Blake disappeared, checked the reservoir because that's what a good supervisor does when an employee goes missing. They'd drowned him for it, held him under until his lungs filled with water, then let him float to the surface so it'd look like an accident. 3 weeks later, Blake had walked out of the facility in clean coveralls, telling me Frank was waiting at intake valve 7. Completed processing. Like Frank's death was just another step in their protocol. Frank had tried to help, tried to find a missing worker and stop whatever was happening to his people. It had gotten him killed. I was still alive, still myself, still capable of understanding what I was looking at. A coordinated operation spanning 8 facilities, 43 optimized workers, 18 months of expansion. Federal funding through shell organizations, corporate contractors who'd identified water infrastructure as optimal research locations 4 years ago. 137 enhanced employees in the current network. 400 projected within 12 months. 1,800 within 3 years. Those numbers sat in my head with perfect clarity. Kim had stated them in that flat voice, and I'd absorbed every detail because that's what I did. Tracked patterns, remembered specifications, understood systems. I understood this system, not just my facility, not just the 8 workers standing around me, the whole network, the scope of it, the mechanisms, how they selected facilities, recruited subjects, maintained cover through industrial accidents and hazardous work environments, how optimized employees spread the protocols to new locations, transferred between facilities, expanded the operation without external management. The families didn't understand. They knew their relatives had changed, stopped recognizing them, moved differently. But they didn't know about the laboratory or the implants or the 1,800 workers projected within 3 years. They just knew something was wrong. The authorities didn't understand. Sheriff's deputies investigated missing persons, found workers who'd returned, closed the cases. They didn't connect 43 optimized employees across 8 facilities or track the expansion pattern. Logan didn't understand. He took calls from desperate families, defended his workers' performance, refused to terminate employees who showed up for every shift. He didn't know about the 3 levels beneath his facility, or the corporate contractors who'd installed a laboratory under his plant 6 years ago. Even Mia didn't understand. She knew I was afraid, knew I was running from something, knew changed workers were following her. But she didn't have the numbers. Didn't know about the network expansion or the self-sustaining recruitment model. I was the only one who'd asked the questions, tracked the patterns, found the carved numbers, confronted Kim, and gotten the 7-day protocol, researched the incidents across 3 states, stood in this chamber while 8 optimized workers explained their entire operation in precise clinical detail because their algorithms determined I'd be processed anyway, so information security didn't matter. I knew things nobody else knew. And in 4 days, I wouldn't know anything at all. Wouldn't remember this moment. Wouldn't remember Mia's face or Frank's death or the families calling Logan's office. Just protocols. Just the algorithm telling me to recruit 2.3 subjects annually and maintain optimal efficiency. The humming continued below, steady, waiting. The workers watched me with empty eyes. My choice would determine everything, not just whether I died as myself or lived as something else, whether anyone would ever understand what was really happening here, whether this network would expand to 1,800 workers with nobody ever connecting the pattern, Whether corporate contractors would keep processing people in underground laboratories with federal funding and shell organizations, while authorities filed missing persons reports, and families begged managers to fire relatives who didn't recognize their own children. The network would continue, regardless. That's what David had said. Self-sustaining. Each optimized worker recruiting new subjects. Processing capacity increasing 12% monthly. The system didn't need me specifically. There'd be another operator eventually. Another designation carved into concrete. Another worker who knew the infrastructure well enough to navigate the old tunnels. But right now, standing at this threshold with machinery humming below and 8 empty faces watching me, I was the only person alive who truly understood the scope of what was happening.